Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Office Hours. Good to see you all again. I hope you guys are. I'm just already seeing the chat going like crazy. This is awesome. So good to have you guys back. We had a nice little 2 week break. I had a little R&R. We got some time to obviously work on our intro countdown, our new graphics. We've got all sorts of really cool stuff planned for you guys for season 2 of Office Hours. But we didn't want to wait any longer. We wanted to get back on the air with you guys to be able to kind of walk through all the new features in the 105 update. And there's also some 104 update features that we didn't get a chance to cover on before we went off air. But first, before we dive into the show, just want to let everybody know, as you guys saw in that new countdown, we need your guys' help to help make that intro awesome. So for the photos, if you guys tag hashtag UAudio or hashtag UA Luna, we're going to find your photos and we're going to put them into that countdown. So always be checking back and posting up stuff on Instagram and Facebook. But then for the music, right now, I asked a bunch of people inside UA to share some of their music. So we're going to start with a bunch of music from UA folks. But then all of you Office Hours viewers, I want to share music from you guys as well. So we've created a special email address, live@uaudio.com. You just send an email to there with either like a download link or an MP3, artist name, song info, how Luna or UAudio was a part of it. Send us an email, and if we like your song, then we're going to be featuring new music every single episode of Office Hours, and really looking forward to that. So, guys, let's dive in. Let's hang out with the guys. We got Drew, Matt, Lev, everybody. We're online. We're on board. How's it going?
What's going on, everybody?
How's everybody doing?
Wow, good to see you guys back. Yeah, it's been so long.
I know.
Yeah.
Right?
That new intro, man, super slick. The guys out there.
Hot damn.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah,
really
great
good
job.
looking stuff.
Yeah, the thing I'm most excited for, just having music being a part of that intro part of the show. Like it was a nice little 10 minutes of silence before. Now it's 10 minutes of really fun music, and it'll be cool, kind of exploring lots of different genres and different types of undiscovered music.
So who was that first one, Ben?
First one, it's basic. That's actually our creative director, Martin. That's his project.
Awesome. Shout out to Martin.
Right. And so we're getting right now. We filled up the folders for the first couple of weeks with a bunch of UA music, and then hopefully, as people start watching the show, they'll start sending us in their music, and then we can continue to evolve and kind of open up that countdown for everybody. But yeah, man, look at it. The chat's going crazy already. It's so good to see everybody back. But so while we were away, we updated to 1.0.5. And right before we went off, we did the 1.0.4 update, but it was in the middle of Moog Week, so it didn't get as much, we didn't get a real chance to dive in there with it. So I figured what would be great for this show would be to let's give people the tour. Let's kind of show them, feature by feature, some of the new stuff that's been added in to Luna with these most recent updates. So let's start top of the list, unless you guys want to preempt what I got on the top of my list.
Let's
work through it.
Want to go to the top? All right, so let's start at the bottom. No, I'm joking. So auto scrolling. What we added auto scroll. Lev, what's
Well, first of all, before I get into it, I know those of you who are the diehards are wondering, where's Connor? Connor's off today, so I'm the poor excuse for a Connor stand-in here. So I'm gonna do my best to try to give you guys kind of a visual demo of what's going on. But sure, let me go ahead and share my screen. We'll jump into maybe taking a look at some of this stuff.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I think right off the bat, you talked about auto scroll. This is one of the biggest requests that we got through the feedback button. For those of you who don't know, we've got a little feedback button up here in the top right. You can tell us exactly what you want. We've gotten thousands and thousands of requests. We're prioritizing our roadmap based on this. So auto scroll, really simple. So if you look here on the bar beats ruler, which is sort of our main time base for all of Luna, we now have this new icon, which is sort of telling you that auto scroll is turned on or off. There's a key command for this, which is Shift A. And you can see as I'm clicking Shift A on my keyboard, this little guy is toggling between these two states. What's cool is that's not all there is to auto scroll. There's a couple little tricks here. So what is auto scroll? Just for those who don't know, I'm going to place my cursor here at the end of the screen. I'm going to hit play. And when the playhead reaches the end, it's going to refocus, the viewer here, so we can see the timeline as it scrolls along. So pretty basic. This is a nice feature that a lot of people who've checked it out are enjoying. But there's more to it, right? So we wanted to come up with something that was a little bit more contextual. And what do I mean by contextual? Let's say that you've got kind of a zoom in happening here. And you go ahead and you do this and you hit play. And it's going to auto scroll at the end of the window here. But if I decide, oh, I actually want to edit this, watch what happens when I click here. This little guy turns gray. So what this is a pause of auto scroll. It allows me to do something contextual. Watch what happens when this reaches the end. The window stays put because auto scrolling has paused. So this would allow me to go in, do some edits, do something that's a little bit more, again, contextual to kind of the workflow. If I want to resume auto scroll, I just hit Shift A again, and it'll pick up sort of wherever the cursor is. And you can see this icon turned back to kind of solid orange when I did that. And so again, auto scroll just having a nice little bit of context around like, yeah, you're in kind of a heavy part of the song. You want to be able to kind of focus in. Auto scroll will pause. Otherwise, if you're just kind of zoomed in and kind of enjoying the run, it'll just, and that little extra functionality, I think, is a really nice, a nice addition to what would be a typical auto scroll behavior.
Lev, I have a quick. That's amazing.
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah, it's a cool feature. I had a question about that though. Is there any operations where, like, what's the difference between it being off and it being paused? Are there any operations where it'll sort of auto restart or anything, or?
Not really, no. I mean, that's why the key command I think is so critical. Like the Shift A, where just, I know you've been like pushing this on social and the forums, like, hey, this is how you turn it on, this is how you turn it off.
Yeah.
Just remembering this key command, I think, is kind of a critical bit about how to bring it back online. Before we had auto scroll, I would always talk about, and I'll turn it off just to demonstrate this. There are other like more rudimentary key commands that could let you do something like this, where let's say I hit play and it scrolls off the screen and we're staying put here because it's off. If you hit down and to the right, that's how you could basically focus the timeline on center of the playhead.
Yeah.
So this is kind of what, this is what I always use as the poor man's auto scroll. And in previous DAWs that I might have used, when auto scroll or page scrolling was annoying to me, I would turn it off and use this little trick.
Yeah, that was the thing that I never used it before because I always hated it grabbing the screen from me. So I was always doing that down arrow, right arrow kind of thing.
Exactly. And so I think this is the spirit of the sort of auto scroll pause feature. It gives you this kind of best of both worlds thing. And again, instead of it being even keyboard driven, it's really more, like, what am I doing in real time? Like if I just click and grab on something, or even click on some of the timeline rulers or markers, there's things that just says, you know what, you probably meant to like anchor this in time because you want to do something. And what would be the most annoying thing we could do right now? Change the view, right?
Exactly.
So that was definitely the idea behind the scrolling pause feature. And it really gives you that, again, that best of both worlds. But
the other thing I noticed was it's really smooth. Like it's not visually jumpy at all, or like sometimes scrolling like that can be kind of mess with your eyes a little bit. And Luna, it's super smooth.
Oh yeah. Well, it's not always that way, right? We have a lot of product development that goes into making sure that stuff, looks and feels great, like the entirety of the GUI of Luna in general. We're always trying to make it, a beautiful experience as well as something really functional. So thanks. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, dude, that's super smart. And there's the number of times I typically have in every other workstation just turned auto scrolling off because it just bumping me out of where I was trying to work. Yep. Just would always drive me nuts. So I'm so glad to see that. And just to make sure it's super clear for everybody, the pausing of the auto scroll happens if you're in playback and then make a selection on the timeline, right?
Yeah. So if I just go ahead and hit play here, you see this guy's orange. Watch this guy as I just click. It turns kind of gray. It's not in the sort of off state, the white state. It's just temporarily disabled such that if my intention was to focus here, it's not going to jump off the screen, but hitting Shift A once again just sort of updates it, and you get the kind of, that nice thing. Now, the other thing that's interesting is even though we're sort of off the screen now, Luna will always return to the insertion point. So if I hit stop and hit play again, it will now auto scroll back to the insertion point, right? So there's just a lot of really clever, I think, things that you'd expect, but also just clever kind of implementation here. Just to, like you said, we thought about what's really annoying about like a kind of a dumb auto scrolling bit of behavior. It's like, oh yeah, I hate when it kind of takes me out of context. So we tried to keep it as simple as we could, but also giving you a little bit of flexibility there.
That's great. Who would have thought auto scroll there was innovation to be had around
Boom.
auto scrolling?
Right.
Nice.
That's awesome. Well, great. So, Drew, I'd love to throw one over to you here for the My Universal Audio folder.
Yeah, sure. So this one, well, it's kind of ironic. As I was thinking of, as I was anticipating us going over this, I realized that. Was that you, Lev?
That was not me.
Was that you, Ben?
That wasn't me.
That might have been me. Sorry.
Well.
Who let a little musical fart out?
Yeah. No, I was just going to say that the one thing I realized that was a little bit interesting for us is that, you know, this will be a little bit more difficult to specifically demo because, you know, we're all fortunate to be able to have access to all of the plugins, but
oh, true.
So yeah, so I kind of forgot about that. So this will be this demo will be a little bit not as this will look different at home. Let's just say
it's a little by
Use their imagination.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Imagine that we don't own all of the UAD plugins.
Yeah, right.
We don't work at the company.
So what
anyway,
you're trying to say is that this is like a worst demo ever preface is what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm gonna get to do the worst demo ever. No, but the idea, you know, this was again kind of like auto scroll. This was something that like a lot of people have been requesting. You know, to be able to show or hide only the plugins that you own in the DAW. And of course, in the DAW, in third-party DAWs, we don't have control over the end-to-end experience, and so therefore it's a difficult thing to do. You can, of course, do it in console. So in case people aren't used to that, you can actually show and hide your plugins in console.
Mm-hmm.
And so that takes care of it for console. For third-party DAWs, you wind up taking them out of the folder so that the DAWs don't see them. But in Luna, we came up with this idea of doing a folder. So if you click on an insert in a channel, and the very first folder is titled My Universal Audio. And of course, when I open it, it shows every plugin. But if, you know, at home, when you're using it, it'll show two things. It'll show all of the plugins that you own, and smartly, it'll show all of the plugins that you're currently demoing. Nice. So it's literally it's my plugins plus whatever I happen to be demoing. And then below that, you have the regular Universal Audio folder where you would find everything else. By the way, this is one of the shortcuts. I can't remember when this one came in, Lev. If it was 104 or something.
104. Mm-hmm.
104 to open and close everything is a handy thing. So if you're opening and closing folders here, you can open and close all of them. And then also it'll remember the states. I think that was 104 as well, where it remembered the states. But anyway.
Yeah. So and what's the key command for that? It's control?
Specifically, it's option plus click, right?
Yeah, option clicking.
Option, right.
And this sort of the option is the sort of, you know, do to all modifier kind of consistently across Luna. And so, like you said, really important, right? Not only are you, you know, able to kind of open and close everything, and that just doesn't even just apply to plugins. There's other lists and categories that might
like the MIDI input list where you
stuff
end up
like
with
that, exactly
1 through 16 1,000 times.
Anywhere where there's a reveal triangle, there's this nice consistency there. But then you said it again, Drew, the ability to be able to remember that state as you go across, you know, opening and closing it. So you're not like, oh man, I have to go and hide all this stuff again. Even with the option click to open and close, it's still kind of a level of management. So now that everything is remembered, it's a nice way to kind of come back to menus that you might be using constantly and kind of know where their state's going to be based on where you left it.
So so that's a you know, not the greatest visual demo because we happen to have them all, but when you guys try that at home, you'll see that it'll greatly increase your ability to navigate that browser as you're adding plugins. And
because that was like the number one feedback was, hey, I just show me the UAD plugins I own, the ones I want to get to fast. So now we've put those all in one place for you. But then of course you still can always get in there and demo the other ones that you don't own yet. Yeah,
I think we surprised some people with that one. Like there was a lot of love for getting that feature in so quickly. But it's a
auto scroll too.
Auto scroll as well.
Yeah.
But I was just going to say, you know, another shameless plug for that feedback button. It's working, right? Like we were not planning to do those features right now. We knew that they were things that we wanted to get to, but the feedback was overwhelming. So when you guys feel passionate about these features, definitely let us know. Also happy to say that, you know, especially like you said, there's been, 2 releases since we've all been together on office hours. A lot of our features, I mean, we've got more than a dozen features, hundreds and hundreds of bug fixes, but a lot of when you actually count it all up, it corresponds to over a thousand individual feedback items from people. So, like I said, there are thousands and thousands of these individual reports from people, but when we actually start categorizing them and tagging them in our internal database, when we look at actually what we've done just in the last month or so, we feel really good about the progress we're making. We've got other great stuff in the pipeline, and more stuff further out. So there's some pretty exciting things, but you guys are truly influencing what we're doing. So
yeah,
keep it
I saw a great question coming in the chat there asking, are there going to be folders for plugin categories coming soon? That's a great piece of feedback right there. So
totally.
hit the feedback button.
Know.
Let us know that you guys that you want the other sorting, because it could easily get confusing, right? If you're trying to organize the same information multiple different ways, that's where systems can sometimes get really complicated.
Yeah, no, definitely seen a lot of good feedback for more sophisticated ways to sort of figure out where your plugins are going to be, and like I said, we're just making these nice incremental changes towards sort of what we have, but I think definitely more feedback the better in terms of what we do next there.
Nice. Cool. So going down the list here, another great new feature that was highly requested was being able to rename files on export.
Yeah, you want me to show this?
Yeah, please do.
Cool. Yeah, this was a big one, and again, if you're taking any kind of theme from what we're doing here, we looked at auto scroll and how on the surface simple it is, but there is some complexity, and some nuance. We're just trying to keep things as simple as possible, I think is the message. And so, yeah, if you're say going into export a clip, there's a couple ways. If I wanted to take this clip here and export it, you can either go here to the export menu from file, and hit clips, or you can see there's a key command, which is Shift Command K. It'll bring up this right-hand side browser. And as you see, this is sort of giving us the name of the clip as it stands. If I were to resize this clip, now you can see the name. You can see it takes that name, but a lot of people are asking, I'm dealing with, getting these individual elements out. I want to rename it. Really easy to just rename something by double-clicking it, right? Yes. So you go in here, you get this kind of contextual bit of feedback here that you're ready to start entering text, and you can name it whatever you want. So that's pretty cool. And if I, of course, hit export here, it would do that. I'm going to not do that for now. Same thing on the export mixdown functionality. So if I come over here and start to initiate a mixdown, it's going to tell me the name of the clip that it's going to export. And this was always and is still derived from the name of the session and the sort of bus that it's taking. And if I started to add other buses and tracks into this, let's head back here. Now you're going to see a bigger list, right? But same kind of workflow as the export clips. It would be really easy for me to say like, oh, this is my master mix. Double click it. I'm just going to call this, the short name for this session, or I think it was 60 main mix. And maybe I'll give it and this is the big thing that people wanted, like a version, right?
Yeah, that's what I always wanted.
Of course. Yeah. And so this is now totally possible. So you can kind of keep track of this. It's still going to give you the sense when you're going to export something with the same name into the directory. So you're still going to get all those benefits that we had before this bit of functionality. But this just gives you a really nice way just to go through. If I were just exporting, in this case, the snaps, which I recorded some snaps on there. Now I can just name them the short name, and it'll, of course, append whatever file format that you apply to this. And it's really
Lev, in that pane, Lev, that pane will follow your standard sort of up and down arrows and return to enter into the text field. And all of that. So
yeah, and especially like if you decide that you wanted to give this like an append, or like if this was like 01 space, and then I hit Shift up to select just those bits of text and hit copy. Now when I go into like these other ones, I can easily hit the left arrow, hit paste, right? So easy enough to go through and kind of have these little quick file management appendages very easily put in there. So now if this was like my first export of this, I'll go ahead and give this the 01 as well. Whatever kind of ways that you're used to being able to enter in text in sort of a finder type situation. We put a lot of that simple stuff in there as well. So yeah, kind of the simplest way that we could think of to just make it quick. There's no modals, no drop downs, no right clicks. Just go ahead and double click, start entering text. And again, there's some basic conventions like copy paste and the arrow keys, like you mentioned, to sort of navigate around in there.
Hell yeah. Nice. Well, seeing just this kind of a unrelated question, but kind of an important one to hit. Chase the Connect is asking, after he did the Luna upgrade, he's not seeing any plugins at all on the left-hand side. Like he's not seeing any of those folders. So when people run into things like that, where you're missing plugins or you're missing, things that you're like, this should be here. Usually, is that just quit Luna and restart it, or should he try restarting the system and then usually those come back? What's the troubleshooting method there?
Yeah, there's a couple answers, and I'd be curious to know what Drew says about it. Yeah, typically, I found that there's still some gremlins in the system when installing new plugins. So sometimes I'll need to do a full restart to get them to show up properly. We're definitely chasing those types of things down. I don't know, Drew, what other kind of things are we telling people on social?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I think that one of the things that, a lot of people seem to do is you get into a little bit of trouble and your first thing is to go ask for help when, the kind of troubleshooting 101 of like a full reboot, full power cycling, always a good idea. So that's always my first, recommendation is to do full power cycles, full reboots on relaunch, and then see what happens from there. There's also some, on our forums, we have the method for uninstalling and or trashing prefs. There's a specific preference that is like the plugin scan. There's one for AUs and one for plugins in general that will cover the UAD stuff. So, feel free to head over to the forum and check out some of the more detailed troubleshooting things that we've laid out. But those are, you can force an AU rescan, which we have a KB article for, and you can also force a scan of plugins in general. But yeah, rebooting and power cycling is always going to be, the first order of business. So.
Nice. And in the forums that you're referring, those are uadforums.com, right?
Yeah. Yep. UAD forum or forums both get you there to the same place. And we have a dedicated Luna section with a few stickies at the top for how to uninstall and where the pref files are. So and then of course our knowledge base. If you just finding our knowledge base on the help.uaudio.com, tons of great information there. So those are always good first recommendations for sure.
Yeah, and just on the topic of documentation, if you go to docs.uaudio.com, that's normally the Luna docs, but that redirect is down right now. So if you're looking for Luna docs and you can't find them, just do a Google search for Luna docs and it'll bring it up for you.
Nice. Google knows the way. It knows how to get around redirects. So it knows how to find exactly.
I've noticed that anything like, because I do it lots of times every day, but it's like just put UAD in front of your search and just that UAD and then what you want. Like it's amazing. It's amazing.
UAD $1 million. It never seems to work. I don't get it. Like
haven't got my check yet.
Yeah. Other than that
one. All right. Well, I'm gonna take this next one or two on the list because these are two of my favorites. So in 1.0.5 on the number keypad, hopefully you guys have got one of these ancient things with the buttons on the right, and if you do, then you can now press 1 and 2, and your playhead will move forward and backward by a bar.
Okay, so for the people
yes,
if you don't have
the people that don't have the numpad, how do you do it?
Oh, well, I don't know. No, I'm just joking. So for that, for the laptop folk and everyone without the number pad, it's the brackets. So right next to the P key, to the right of the P key, you see the brackets. Pressing those without any modifiers will take your playhead forward and backward in time. But the fun doesn't stop there, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Lev, you can add shift to these commands.
Yes, you can.
Totally.
And by adding shift to that command, you can now be doing selections, and of course by using the P and the semicolon keys, I can move up and down through tracks. I can add shift to it. So this is a really nice, powerful workflow for being able to select and move your playhead and your cursor around in time.
All mouseless.
Yeah, it's just so cool to be able to just hold shift and sort of like extend that selection in both directions. So like if you kind of realize like, oh, I'm off by a bar or whatever. One other nuance that I think is really powerful is you can be inside of a bar and but you're just not up against the bar boundary. And hitting that will always just quantize it to a bar boundary. So just that little tiny nuance of like, you think you're at the beginning of the bar, but you're not quite sure. It's nice to be able to just hit that like left or right, bar navigator, and it'll always just put you solidly on the bar. It's not gonna be like, oh, I'm in the middle of a bar and then I offset it by that amount. It's just a nice way to just always kind of be within the boundaries of the bar, the bars and beats.
I think it's another instance of the guys, the development team really thinking like, it's like, okay, 1 and 2 could be fast forward and rewind, but how can we make it a smarter fast forward and rewind? It's like smart fast forward and rewind, which is super cool.
Totally. Yeah. It speaks the language of the grid, of the bar beat grid that we're, so tied to in this world, and in a good way, where it's nice to be able to not have to think as much.
Yep.
When you click and you're thinking about it, you're like, oh, what's my grid value? I should probably decrease that to make it easier to hit these bar boundaries. This feature just takes all the guesswork out of it. And like you said, Ben, it's just an awesome sort of editing and arrangement type feature as well. When you talk about adding shift and selection, and it's just made things so quick for me to just move around. It's awesome.
Totally. Well, and then my second other favorite feature, this is one that came in, I think, in 1.0.4 that we didn't really get a chance to shine as much light on yet, which is the Shift S, Shift T, Shift R, and Shift M. All now is, you guys are probably seeing this happening over here on my track marker. This allows you to quickly enable, disable, record, input, solo, mute, all the quick handy key commands that are being able to just like select a track on the edit, hit Shift S, boom, I'm listening to just that track. You can select multiple tracks, Shift S, now you're listening to just that group of tracks.
Yeah, that one's huge. That click and drag to select, and then Shift S. Like, I mean, it doesn't get any faster than that to solo a couple of group of tracks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, Ben, the Shift T is for input.
Input. Exactly.
As Connor said, input.
Yeah, so we know that we had a little bit of a spirited debate internally about making that Shift I. That's maybe what the key command is in some other workstations.
Mm-hmm.
We were already using Shift I for the shift commands, the editing commands, which stands for insert time, and whether or not it was that the shift functionality for editing got there before the key commands for the track got there, or we just had this natural collision. We'll leave that debate to eternity. But if you really hate the fact that it's Shift T and not Shift I, maybe you can send us some feedback on that.
I just love that reply. That was awesome. That was an awesome reply that Connor had.
It was also one of those things that it just the T looks kind of like an I if you squint. So, lots of internal justification.
Well, and it's next to it. It's next to R on the keyboard.
Exactly. That was another big one. Of course, in the wrong order anyway, because you'd think input record, you'd like that.
Yeah.
We were like, E doesn't make sense. So anyway, there was a lot of debate. These are definitely things that could be improved over time, but we're sort of settling on them and saying, let's see how this feels. And if people like it or not, we've definitely seen some positive feedback on having these key commands so far. So that's great. And definitely for myself, it's just really nice to quickly, especially Shift S, like you said, just quickly select some tracks, Shift S, and you're not even thinking about it. It's really, really intuitive.
Well, Scott just asked on the chat here, is there a key command for metronome on and off that he might have missed?
There is.
The 7 key. It's
the 7 key on a numeric keypad, which I think you can also, if you don't have a numeric keypad, use the function and 7 key on like a laptop. So,
the only downside to that one is that, and this was something I submitted myself, was that only kills it for the mons, not the Qs. So if you want that 7 key to kill the click entirely, you can hit that feedback button. That's just a little.
Plug. Well, and I think, really when you get into the notion of using Qs, you're talking about a much more complicated management setup, right? Like, kind of makes sense that there's like a dedicated button for the main one, but we start having to start gobbling up a bunch of other keys to make that work for Qs. So a good reason to keep that floating window sort of up and about when you're dealing with talent. That's been sort of a bigger question about like managing the Qs. It's like, well, the UI is like a surface, right? You want to keep that stuff kind of visible and accessible at all times when you're trying to track an overdub, I think.
Yeah, for me as a primarily an engineer, less of a performer, is like I like to kill the click to minimize, make sure click bleed doesn't happen. When at the ends of the songs, getting that click, you want the transport to still roll, but you need the click to go away. So like that 7 key really, or turning it off keeps it from getting into the cues.
I don't know, man. When you listen to those old recordings, like from the tape and console days, and like you hear the click track, like. Everyone's heard like some of those Queen sessions, for example.
Yeah.
And you can solo up Freddie, and you can listen, and you hear the click, and you're like, oh, that's so awesome. There's something about
you
that.
There.
It has some nostalgia for me. I don't know. Maybe I'm alone there.
Definitely.
All right, the chat is getting impatient with us, guys. Control surface integration. When is it happening, Lev? Give us all the details.
Okay, control surface integration is coming in the future.
It's happening at some point.
All I can say is that it's a big topic, and your feedback has absolutely, changed the tide in terms of when we were planning to execute on that. So I certainly can't say if or even when we're, going to work on this stuff, but I can tell you that we're working on it. We're looking
So,
at it. It's absolutely the kind of thing where, wow, it turns out people really want this. And
yeah.
we would be
Would it be
silly
helpful?
not to put some effort on this. So
Yeah. Would it be helpful for them to be more specific? Like instead of just saying control surface support, would you rather have them be more specific?
The nice thing is that they've been plenty specific. We've actually got separate tags in our database for no less than a dozen different control surface manufacturers.
Oh wow!
Luckily, a lot of them use a lot of the same protocols, like MCU or Huey. Obviously, there's Yukon. There's other MIDI protocols. There's OSC. There's all sorts of things out there. So these are all things that we're looking at. Again, I can't promise exactly when these things are going to happen, but we're taking it seriously. People are asking for this, so we're looking at it. And unfortunately, as you might expect, we've got a couple of these thematic things. It's a big effort, right? Like people ask a lot about when's Windows coming. It's like we really can't commit to when. We know that that's a big thing. All we can say is it's a big thing, and hence it's not going to happen right away. But again, we're definitely looking at control surfaces. We're definitely looking at making strides there so that people can get more hands-on with Luna.
Oh yeah. Awesome. Well, all right. So back to features. Man, I'd love to throw it over to you for some of these, some of the new MIDI features that we've been adding in 105 and 104. So what do you got for us?
Well, yeah. First, let me touch on one just like general feature, then I'll cover a couple MIDI features. So the one thing I believe we added this in 105 was you can now drag to change the tempo, which is really cool because if you want to kind of audition a different tempo change in real time, if you got like a tempo in your mind but you're not sure exactly what the number is, you can hit playback and actually drag the tempo down. It'll change in real time. Then as soon as you get to that tempo that you're looking for, you leave it there. So that's a great feature.
That's really helpful.
I saw some questions about, can I automate that? And the answer is kinda, right? If you go to the tempo ruler and you reveal it down, you can draw in a tempo change. Yeah, exactly, that little reveal triangle. Don't yet have a way to sort of automate that with the actual gesture of the mouse. In case that was,
that'd be kind of cool.
Case anyone was curious. It would be super cool. It would also be, I don't know, like the precision or lack of precision might be kind of an issue for people. So you can get much more precise using the pencil tool. Some of the curve editors that Matt's got on screen on the left is another area where you can be very precise about selecting a range and saying starting tempo is 120, stopping tempo is 150, and it can do a nice gradual change there. But
that's also new, isn't it?
That's in 1.0, people. This is the hidden
up the pull down ad.
Even on Office Hours 562, we're finding new features.
Holy
crap!
Wait, there was a curve thing inside the tempo menu this whole time.
The whole time.
Oh my gosh!
I'm just trying to scoop Drew here, who found all of our Easter eggs and all of the new features.
The add curve is a pull down, Matt.
That's right. And what's cool is exactly. And if you see the curve that's being drawn there programmatically, super precise. Oh, here's a line. But if you were to go exactly, you can kind of go the other way and kind of pull in some different gradual shapes, get more of a crescendo. You also end up drawing a line the other way if your starting tempo is faster than one that you're going to end up in. So if you go from fast to slow, you'll see the curve go the other way. So it gives you a nice little visual cue there. Really, really nice to be able to do. So it's in concert with all these different tempo and timeline features, a lot of great ways to just design, tempo changes inside of Luna.
Dude, okay. Dude, I can't believe that's been in there since 1.0, and we just now found the add curve feature. And wow, okay.
That's great. Yeah, in case you missed it, I was going kind of fast. It's when you hover over the tempo ruler, this little plus sign appears. That brings up the window where you can add the curve.
And there's one other nuance. You've got a selection made. When you've got a selection made, that's when you see the curve editor. If you just insert your cursor and hit the plus sign, it'll just be the tempo change. So again, some nice little hidden gems for folks who want to do more complex tempo mapping.
Yeah,
to be clear, Matt, in Matt's demo, like his bass track is an audio track, and so it's set to tempo mode, or else don't be clicking and dragging the tempo and expect your audio to stay put if they're not in tempo mode.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, that's a big one. And by default, your tracks are going to default to tempo mode. But if you start dragging and dropping in clips, they're going to default to time mode, so that doing tempo changes doesn't affect them until you lock them into tempo mode. So yeah, right there, what Matt's clicking on is
see, there you
critical
go.
Little nuance. Yeah, look at that.
If you see that run, undo.
I love that visual though. I love that visual. Yeah, you start seeing it move around. It feels like things are broken, but it's like, nope, that is in the absolute location that it needs to be in. based on the fact that it's in time mode as opposed to tempo.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's in the time location, not the tempo location.
It makes me feel like Luna's a little high when we do that. Like you drag and drop the tempo. It's like,
Whoa.
whoa, these audio files are moving around. This is cool.
Got a mind of their own.
Yeah, right.
Cool. Yeah, so a couple other MIDI related features that we can cover while we're in here. Simple and easy one that I think is awesome is you can double click on MIDI clips. You can rename them now.
Nice.
Believe we had that in 104, but that's awesome.
I've got a lot of sessions that still say instrument 1, instrument 2, like
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. You don't have to split them into separate tracks anymore. Now you can have A and B parts in the same and easily identify them.
mm-hmm.
So that's awesome. And then another really great MIDI feature is MIDI chase, which we didn't have before. So that's if you start playing, if you were just to start playing, MIDI from the beginning of the clip, it's obviously going to play all the notes. But if you were to start playback in the middle of a MIDI note, it wouldn't start until the next MIDI note. But with MIDI chase, the MIDI note starts wherever you play back, even if it's in the middle of a note.
Nice.
So like here, I'm in the middle of all three of these notes, but if I hit play, I still hear them, which is awesome because if I'm working on something on another track, I want to start on the downbeat on my drum track or whatever, but it doesn't line up perfectly with my keys. This way, I can still hear everything in context when I start playback there.
Nice.
There's another big benefit for this, which is using our built-in arpeggiator.
Yep.
Right. So it was always this thing: you're starting kind of midway through a part, like you said, Matt. But your arpeggiator wouldn't really play. Now, there was, of course, some nuances there with doing MIDI chase in your arpeggiator where you kind of want to be on like a good grid line division, right? If your snap is turned off and there's no grid, it can be a little bit wonky, but generally speaking, this is a huge feature for just being able to like drop in anywhere and your arpeggiator is still kind of locked in time. So it's a thing I use it for all the time as well.
Yeah, as another person who will do like 32 bars of a single, like 2 notes arpeggiating forever and ever and ever. It's nice to not always have to go back and start from the beginning of the section.
That's a must-have, yeah.
Exactly.
Totally.
Nice, awesome. And were there any other big MIDI ones in there? I know we've had a few people kind of asking questions about automation. Have there been any updates about how automation is handled?
Yeah, we did. It's not really anything new, but we improved how automation gets added. Like when you double click to add a breakpoint. I believe previously when you double clicked, it wouldn't always add the value exactly where you double clicked. Now, wherever you double click is where it adds the value.
Nice.
Yeah. So specifically, this was like you had to kind of click right on the line. And it was kind of like a hit or miss thing, pun intended.
I missed it all the time.
Yeah. So maybe Matt, if you want to just blow the track up like a few sizes and like click like on the bottom or something, you're going to just create that. You're going to create a new automation breakpoint. You can see where the cursor is.
Creates it where the volume is at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's not changing values on you. It's just giving you that ability to kind of go through anchors and breakpoints, and then you go and edit and manipulate them pretty easily.
Yeah. So if you want to add a breakpoint, right at the beginning of this note or whatever, you don't have to line it up. You can just click at the beginning of the note. That's where you want
and
it.
What's so cool about this is like you're in the grid, so you can know that like, I'm going to add, a breakpoint right on the grid, and then easy enough to now with these 2 breakpoints you've got, go ahead and just trim in between, say the 2 that you just made. Or you could do like a nice little ramp there. Like it's nice to just be able to start like defining these things, beforehand and then just go. I find it just so much more intuitive for how that all works.
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone that platinum sound on the live chat is asking about. So you notice like as soon as you start adding automation, Luna seems to be adding a automation marker right at 0, like right at the beginning of the song. That's automatic, and that's on purpose, right, Lev?
Yeah, and it's to solve a very simple problem that happens in a lot of other workstations, which is ramping. Right. So if you think about doing that and like you're downstream, a lot of other workstations actually just ramp from the beginning to there because by definition you've potentially set a different starting point for that. So a lot of what Luna tries to do in its automation system is not create sort of spurious ramps. It tries to sort of anchor things, so it makes it easier over time to be able to just like adjust the overall level for a given clip at a certain time. And like Matt just showed it, where just as you're sort of clicking and dragging up and down on that flat line, we're trying to just maintain some level of uniformity, because a lot of the time that's what you're looking to do, unless you've got really complex penciled in moves, right? You're just trying to say like, for the chorus, I just want this thing to be up like half a dB and just make that simple on me and not have to like make a bunch of selections and do things that are kind of unwieldy. This makes it really simple, I think. And that upfront breakpoint ensures that you don't get any any weird artifacts. Like how many times are you in the mixer window and you just see a bunch of faders very slowly inching their way up or down? It's because there's some like unintended consequence of using automation, and we tried to eliminate that as best we could.
Nice. And there was another good. This is back to the MIDI chase. Arthur was asking, is there a way to turn note chase on and off? Is that an option, or is it just always on?
I don't believe there's a way to turn it off right now. We definitely
always
got
on.
we got a lot of requests to turn it on. So I think that's where we start. It definitely, if people want an option to turn it off, let us know.
Nice. Awesome. Looking through my notes here, we back. Oh yeah, so Drew, I know this was.
You want me to take that one?
Yeah, this was one that you brought up. It's really important for people to know about, I think.
Yeah, this is something I see a lot on a day-to-day basis. Is a little bit of people understanding what console tracking mode is, and it's a feature that started out very simply, where it kept Luna from muting your live inputs, right? So, but we kind of I believe it was 105 or 104 for that one. 105, I think it was 105, where playback input monitoring stays on. It's an added function to console tracking mode.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is that with console tracking mode on, you're gonna get a couple of different benefits. First of all, you have your live inputs persist at all times. So in other words, you're not relying upon Luna's track arming or input button. So if you're a person who likes to keep all of your live inputs active at all times, you've got a guitar, you've got a bass, you got keys, you got synths, and you just want them to be live at all times, then you'll probably be a person that wants to use console tracking mode. That'll keep Luna from muting those tracks.
Mm-hmm.
But what we added in 105, I believe it was, where is now we've taken that a step further, and you actually have live audio persisting during pre-roll and post-roll. So a lot of people who've been used to the Apollo workflow for the last 8 years, they're used to this. They're used to always having live audio no matter what. This helps singers, find their notes during pre-roll. It helps guitar players figure out where they are. In other words, the ability to hear yourself in the monitors and the cues. And that's in both pre-roll and post-roll. So it's kind of an addition of console.
Mm-hmm. So it's like, if you want to be able to hear everything that's happening on those inputs, regardless of if Luna's playing back or if it's recording, you just want a seamless, nonstop signal going to the headphones for the performance.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a second aspect to this of console tracking mode where it keeps Luna from completely taking control of given channels, right? So some people like to be able to set stuff up in console, or maybe they've got some previously existing sessions or channel strips in console.
Mm-hmm.
And by having console tracking mode on, when you arm a track that has an input that's associated with that channel in console, console tracking mode keeps Luna from taking it over.
Gotcha.
But it also does keep it from storing the setups too. So it's kind of a positive and a negative as well. And then actually this came from the chat today, a further extension of that, if you want to take this all the way to its most extreme iteration, and that would be isolate mode, right? So this is something people were asking about. Isolate is that keeps Luna from doing anything to a channel.
Mm-hmm.
So this is actually something that can go against console tracking mode. So if a channel is isolated, you will always hear its input, even regardless of whether that's on. So if you ever find yourself in that situation where you can't, it'll keep it from taking over any kind of channel aspect of that. So, and I don't know, maybe Lev, maybe I missed something, or if you have any other details.
I think you nailed it. Okay. I think the main thing just to understand is, we're definitely trying to make people comfortable with whatever workflow that they're either preferring or used to, right? People transitioning from sort of using console 2 with another workstation, console tracking mode's this awesome transition state, we feel, along with having other benefits where if you're using multiple DAWs and console sort of the anchor for how you get into it, it's just a fantastic integration that no other DAW has, with, like what you said, being able to just sort of have knowledge about what's going on in console. And, Luna can basically import that data automatically when you record. But of course, we designed ARM mode, accelerated real-time monitoring, to sort of make it so you don't need the console. And that's really if you're kind of dedicated to, tracking and overdubbing inside of Luna, either from the beginning or at any point during a session. You can have a huge session, and ARM mode just makes things really intuitive to just drop into record. It uses the DSP on the interface, so you don't have to kind of worry about buffers and other kind of complications that come up when you're using another DAW. So those types of things, I think, are kind of the reasons why. But yeah, console tracking mode and this really important nuance of being able to hear yourself before the punch. That's the new feature, and it makes things just that much more familiar to folks, who've been using console for a long time. Now it works exactly that way in Luna with all the other added benefits of what Luna can do.
Yeah, it's
with,
very powerful. Like
Yeah.
I'm not a it seems to do things I've not seen elsewhere. So
yeah.
Yeah, just a troubleshooting tip. If you just updated to 105 in the Luna app, you didn't actually update your UAD software. This feature that we're talking about is dependent on the latest UAD software version. So make sure you update your UAD software as well.
Yeah, good point, Matt.
Definitely a great point.
Nice. Just kind of circling back here, I had another comment about that first automation point. So that platform sounds asking again. So if you wanted to delete the first automation point, so the fader goes back to 0, but you can't delete that first marker from the session. So what I'm imagining is that since we're drawing in that very first one, if they're not able to remove that one, you just add one next to it and then kind of snap it back over to the left and down or up, right?
That's right. Yeah. So there's all sorts of ways that you can sort of anchor that thing up or down. But that would be the easiest way. And as Matt showed, it would be easy just to sort of double click anywhere after that first point, and then you can start manipulating what happens next.
Mm-hmm. It's getting so many good feature. We're back on the feature request train over here. Volume dB values for volume automation.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that in the feedback forum. Keep it coming. That's definitely something that we want for sure. Yeah.
Sidechain.
Sidechain I've seen a lot of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we little inside peek. I mean, again, we really have just taken all of this stuff to heart. We were just talking with the guys last week, the engineers, about how the heck we could do sidechain any quicker. So we've got some interesting ideas about that. But again, can't give you any dates on when that's going to happen. But definitely these conversations are happening at UA. So
nice, great. Well, man, we're coming up on our hour here for the show. So it'd be really great to maybe Lev, bring it back over to you, because there's some stuff around snap, drag and drop, duplicating, and also the Command H. In case people are used to using Command H to hide an app, that's recently changed inside of Luna as well. So it'd be good to show people what's going on there.
Let me cover all that. Yeah. So you talked about snap drag, snap duplicate, might be called constrain in some other applications. What the heck is this? It's a pretty bad demo on, say, when we've got the grid enabled, right? It's not terribly difficult to sort of,
you're nailing it. Look at that. You're crushing it. You're right on the grid lines, Lev. You're so good at this.
I'm doing it on purpose, right? But here's the point. What does this constrain or this snap feature do?
Mm-hmm.
Really simple. You hit the control key, and let me just start with not hitting the control key. I'm gonna start dragging this around, right?
Yep.
And remember where that clip was in the beginning. It was right here. If I hit the control key, it's gonna snap back to that point. And now, as I drag and drop this up and down, it's locked to that position.
Mm-hmm.
Where this is really powerful is if you have snap turned off. Maybe you've got some edit like right in the middle of the grid here. Let me go ahead and separate this out. So now I've got this classic problem. I'll zoom this up a little bit. It's not on the grid. It's definitely a precarious thing to try to move this from one track to the next. But holding the control key, easy enough to. Of course, I did it in the wrong order. Hitting the control key, you can see I'm doing this with ease. I'm not actually worried about this kind of getting out of time.
Mm-hmm.
Before, the way that you had to do this was with key commands or some gestures, right? Those key commands or gestures would have been select this whole thing, hit copy or cut, and then maybe select the track name to move the selection down. Then you could hit paste. Or the other way to do it would have been to hit copy, use the P and the semicolon and kind of move the selection that way.
Mm-hmm.
What's nice about this is just with that in control, you sort of get the gestural version of this. And of course, this works on audio clips, works on MIDI clips. It's a really nice way just to make sure that everything you do is precise.
Well, what's cooler, what's also added in there, Lev, is it also, you'll remember it snaps to that location as well, even when you're just moving. So if you grab that region and move it around and go back to your original track, and as you approach the original place without the control key, even without the control key held, watch, it'll go towards, and see how it snapped to its original location.
Oh yeah, totally.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I love that. I use that all the time. It's like it knows where it came from. It knows its original location.
It's its own little grid, as we called it. Yeah, when we were talking about this, it's like a little bit of memory around that, so that it can be smarter, if you will. So,
mm-hmm. Well, and that's happened so many times too. Like especially if I'm not working in snap mode and say like comping vocals or moving things around, where you're just quickly grabbing just a chunk completely off the grid, pulling it down, every once in a while you pull it. You're always nervous, right? When you're pulling something down, you're like, oh, maybe I'm going to shift it a little to the right, to the left, and you get nervous about that. It's nice that you can make the move and then hit control, and then it's like, I got you. Let me lock that back into the place where it was.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's the trust fall of Luna features. Absolutely.
Totally.
So yeah, you talked about this feature. There's the other feature that kind of goes in concert with it. So the notion that I want to maybe take this and just duplicate it down, can hold down Control Option and basically just pull this thing down without any kind of fear of this thing moving around in time, right? So very quick. You saw how quick I did it just by holding those two keys down, and I'm just pulling down a copy of this to the next track. You can even sort of do that after the fact, where you kind of hold Control, and now I've moved it up to this track, but then I add Option and let go, and you actually see that it's duplicated it and kind of left it in place as well. So a really nice way to just like you said, just have that confidence about what you're doing, and not really not have to change modes, go in and out of snap mode, or do a lot of thinking. It's some really nice intuitive moves there.
That's really great. And so what about Command H? We recently changed what Command H does.
Yeah, so Command H, this was a big request from folks to be able to basically heal editing commands back to their original state. And so what this means is if I were to have gone through and made a bunch of edits here, where I've now separated these guys into separate clips, maybe for any number of reasons you decide you didn't want to do that, you can easily just select across them, hit Command H, and it will heal those edits back to the original. Before, Command H would hide Luna, which of course for people that are used to Command H as a heal functionality was pretty frustrating when you're like, I'm trying to heal my edits, not hide the app. Kind of an anti-goal if you're us. So yeah, heal separation is now Command H. If you want to hide Luna, of course, you can come to the Luna menu in the top left here, and there's still the hide option. But we've taken away the key command for that.
Or you can use if you use the Command Tab is the application switcher in Mac OS.
Right.
So
totally.
if you Command Tab into that, it will still respect Command H. So
Really?
Command Tab.
Drew showed me this one on Friday. I thought it was really cool. So yeah, any app that you selected there, you hit the
There's your
H
Easter
while it's
egg,
up.
You can also quit.
Oh yeah,
can
I
also
know about
quit.
the quit one, but yeah, that's cool. That's a how to use a Mac 101 thing that I never really thought about. That's awesome.
Oh man, that's like 201. Well, that's you don't get that in the first day of class.
I mean, as a Pro Tools user for 25 years, that's how I've always hidden. That's how I have always.
Well, and it's funny. That's usually how I quit apps too. So it's funny that I never thought about.
Well, and just to add into what you're saying there, Lev, that heal separation, I use that a lot to determine whether say a vocal take was from the same pass. So if you have a vocal track edited to hell, and you see a clip, a little region in there, and you're trying to determine whether line 1 and line 3 were from the same take, you could get rid of the middle one and then try and heal the two, and that tells you if it was in fact from the same take.
Yeah, love that.
Which is a very handy feature. I use that all the time.
And so, Lev, if someone, say you separate some clips like this, and say you a common reason I'll take a solid body of audio and clip it up would be to do something like clip gain or clip pitch. So if you change the clip gain on something, does that prevent you from then healing it back together?
Yeah, so you're going to see what happens here.
Good question, Ben.
It basically has to apply it to another clip.
Got it.
So it's going to take, I think, the leftmost clip and apply it downward. It'd be easy enough to, of course, just come up back in here and maybe zero this out, and you're back to where you were.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of have to pick, a behavior that makes the most sense. And by definition, you're healing it to some greater clip. So we had to make that choice. But
gotcha.
A good point to be aware of. But yeah, really easy to see that kind of visually as well. In that example. So good, a good little edge case there.
Nice. Getting more feature requests coming in. Hardware inserts, Lev. Are you guys on it?
Yes, we're thinking about it. Again, can't tell you when, but nobody wants hardware inserts more than me. I've got a whole bunch of outboard gear, and definitely using it, on sort of the front and back end. But we know that people want to use it in the loop. So
I tell people that all the time. It's like the guys making Luna they're making it for themselves as well as us. So
definitely, man.
all the stuff you want, they want it too.
Yeah, we're all doing the same kind of work, right? We're trying to integrate the inside and outside world of your computer, your studio. So can't do it all in one day. That's definitely the point of the feedback button, and definitely gotten a lot of great requests for hardware inserts. So definitely aware.
Yep. Oh, Arthur, you just asked us a nice, easy one. Is there a key command to apply multiple crossfades across multiple clips?
There's not even a key command. There's something I think that's there's a couple of gestures, and I guess there is technically a key command. So like if you had something like this and you wanted to do a crossfade, that's the F key.
Mm-hmm.
And we zoom in a little bit on a point here. You can kind of see it come in automatically. So this little crossfade came in here. That was just a single F key. It didn't have to hold any kind of modifier down. If I undo that, that's easily undoable. Actually, I've got a good example here where I've got these really high quality recorded snaps. I literally snapped into my microphone to make these snaps happen. Right? Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Never heard snaps this high quality before.
It's the greatest snap I've ever heard.
That's right. It's tremendous. Okay, so but if you wanted to apply, say, fade outs to all these, it would be really easy to select across them, and anywhere where it can, it will. You can see this. I'm not having to put it in any kind of a groups mode. It's just sort of saying, like, intelligently, I want to apply fade ins, fade outs across anything that's selected. So that's a really powerful tip if you're just trying to, and this, again, kind of classic example, maybe this would be a bunch of guitars or a bunch of drums, maybe not snaps, but yeah, it'd be easy enough to just draw in fade ins and fade outs across multiples of these, and easy enough also to, with that same selection, kind of extend that or change that out. Let me blow this up just a little bit. And why does that not work? Good times.
And so, you're kind of using selection grouping at the same time here, right, Lev?
Exactly, yeah. And this was going to be my main little point, just to click on this guy and kind of even change out the fade shape.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so selection grouping is a huge part of this, where as you kind of know, you've got a lot of things that just intuitively happen based on multiple tracks being selected. So we just showed you how fades kind of work. The same could also be applied to trim. So without going modal, I'm able to sort of trim these first couple clips in sort of a grouped mode. And that's enabled by selection grouping just sort of being on, which is cool. There's a lot of things like that are just kind of, they automatically happen without having to think too much about it, which is kind of the idea, not to have so many modes that you couldn't even think about it. That was
kind of grouping them together so that way it's intuitive and similar. Yeah. Nice.
Most definitely. Let's see. We talked about constrained clips, heel separation. I think we covered it.
Yeah.
But definitely some nice little bits of intuitive functionality. And I think another thing thematically with a lot of the stuff we're seeing, we've not a whole lot of new UI, right? Like there's a lot of existing UI just made better. Sure, we've got the new auto scroll to be able to kind of indicate when that's happening. But so much about what goes on inside of Luna is just sort of intuitively, it's like, oh, well, the thing you're doing is the thing that, happens. And what I mean by that is, yeah, we didn't go into a mode to automatically, trim or fade a bunch of these things. It just sort of, you select a bunch of things and you start trimming and it happens, right?
Yeah.
So we try to keep that as kind of our leading mantra so that we don't end up with, a top toolbar that's just like riddled with stuff. And you're like, what does all this stuff do? Try to make it more contextual, try to make it something that where you might expect something to happen. That's where it happens. It's not, modes and like, standing on one finger and like trying to, twiddle your toes. There's
I'm trying to remember precisely which was a control option or a control option command. Like trying to remember trying to hold a ton of things all in one place is totally difficult.
Yeah, that was sort of the idea. And we got more amazing features right around the corner. The dark secret is I'm actually using a newer version of Luna, and there's a couple of these new features in there. I had to be cautious to hide them from you. So you guys will be hearing about that in the coming weeks. We're coming out with new features and releases all the time. So a lot of exciting stuff happening on the development side.
Totally. Well, man, this is Lev. Thanks so much for kind of helping, and Drew and Matt as well. Thanks for walking us through this. We've got tons of new features and updates, and it's a lot of these little tiny quality of life improvements that we've been adding in there that are you can definitely tell from seeing the chat reaction here. Like there's people are appreciating seeing the progress being made, and then it's also nice to hear just how all the feedback is being received and being implemented into new versions of Luna every couple of weeks is amazing. So guys, thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you everybody at home for tuning in and watching. We missed you guys. We hope you guys enjoyed having us back. We enjoyed being back here with you. It's just like
to be back,
right? It's just like a horse. It's nice to get back up and riding again. If you guys saw, hopefully, maybe you came in a little bit late. You may have missed the very beginning of the show, but we've changed up our countdown and how we get into these shows, and we need help from you guys to help source music and photos for those. So live@uaudio.com is the email address to hit us up with any music, photos, questions, suggestions for the show, just ongoing feedback for the show. We now have a dedicated inbox that is manned by myself in the Office Hours crew. So yeah, hit us up with the emails for music suggestions, photos, questions, show ideas, and we'll be listening over there in between shows, as well as obviously to the live chat while we're on the show. So yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow. Fab's coming back with another Tales from the Switch. We're going to be wrapping up his project with Nezarene, listen to some of those final mixes, checking out some of those final mix sessions, and seeing kind of what's involved in wrapping up a whole project like that. So we'll be back here tomorrow, and we're also, as you guys probably noticed, we're at a new time slot. We're coming in a little bit earlier, so that way we can get a little bit more participation from our folks across the pond, as well as here in America. So I hope you guys appreciate that as well. I think that's all the announcements I have. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching. This has been a blast being back, and we'll see y'all here tomorrow.
Bye, everybody.
See you guys.
See ya.